All right, we're recording. All right. Well, okay. Before I ask you what you thought of this, let me go ahead and ask you this: did you like it more than Old?
Oh, I'm gonna like anything more than Old right now. That's still like top of my list. Worst films of 2021. Anything's gonna be better than Old to me.
Yeah, I think I'd rather like want to rewatch. I don't know, America the Motion Picture before I rewatch Old.
For real. Oh my god. Oh yeah, no, Old sucked. I like obviously like I love this one way better than Old.
Yeah. We saw The Green Knight. And it's different. It's different, like it was. It was honestly what I was expecting when I heard A24 was gonna be, because it's from A24 and it's from David Lowery, the guy who did A Ghost Story, and so it's basically what I expected from him.
Yeah.
So basically, what this movie is this movie is the Arthurian legend of Sir Gawain.
I think that's how it's pronounced.
And he is what, King Arthur's nephew?
Yeah.
Okay.
His nephew.
And it's about his quest going, and it's in this sort of this fable, you know, kind of this, where they have these very, it's in, where it's very specific with like what it is, like,
yeah,
in its stories where things kind of just happen almost like in like a parable sort of way. Like it's very specific where.
It's kind of like a road trip story.
Yeah. But well, I'm not just talking about that, but like how the premise is basically the Green Knight, who is apparently a tree man, and challenges him to a game of whoever can land like a blow with like a weapon against him, but in 1 year they have to come back and see him. They have to travel to him and let him land the same blow.
Yeah.
And
that's where I started wondering some things.
Yeah. Like, and it's this very specific things, like, why would you do, like, no normal person would think of that, but in the world of, like, fairy tales and fables and myths and legends, that's the kind of stuff people do. You know, it's just like, who was it with the golden apples? Every time they threw the golden apples down the hill, they would always have to run and chase it. Like, it was always, like, these really weird, mythology is full of just these real weird, specific things like that.
I'm trying to think. The only one I can think of with that was, like, the race between Atalanta and the guy that was trying to win her hand in marriage.
I think it's the same thing. It's probably that.
Where it's probably, like, if like he caught them and made it back, or no, actually no, if they were supposed to run a race, he distracted her by throwing.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Because every time they threw the apple, they'd have to run down the hill and get it. Yeah. Yeah, it's like, it's that kind of thing where he has to land this, where he fights the Green Knight, which really kind of sets him up. It's really kind of a setup against it, because when he goes to fight the Green Knight doesn't fight back and instead just gives him his head to be cut off, which means in 1 year he has to go to the Green Knight and expect to have his head chopped off.
I know, and I was just like, you know, like, you really didn't think this through, guy. You could have just, like, done a little poke on the cheek or something.
But where this comes from, and one of the things where this, the reason he does that is what I eventually was convinced of as I was watching the movie, because I was thinking that too. One of the things that this movie focuses on with Sir Gawain, above anything else, is this guy, he wants something to be remembered for. Because they keep using these words like honor, courage, what was some other ones?
Honor.
Yeah, well, I think honor was the big one. Honor is the big, and that's
the classic Zuko trope.
That's exactly what it is. And so as he goes out for the Green Knight, he ends up, it's very episodic, this very picaresque kind of Pinocchio or Forrest Gump kind of story, where it's told in episodes, but ultimately they fit together very well, that you get a very cohesive, solid, self-contained story told in chapters.
Yeah.
And each of these, there's some kind of, they build eventually to this story of a man seeking this honor and something to be remembered for his name to go down in these legends.
Right.
And I would say by the end of it, I was very much convinced that it did this.
Yeah.
Like, it's very entertaining, these, like, stories, these different shorts that kind of go together.
Yeah. To
fit this story. I would say one of my problems with this movie, and it is at times a very slow, surprisingly dialogue-heavy film.
Yeah.
At times. But once I felt it got going and really started taking you into these, like, through this journey that includes everything from bandits to ghosts to naked giants.
Attack on Titan giants.
Yeah, I leaned over to you at that scene when the giants come out, and I was just like, Attack on Titan music plays. Yeah, like, and then eventually gets down, and when he finally gets the green, and it's basically a lot. It's exactly what you would expect of, like, A24 making a blockbuster. This is the closest thing to a blockbuster I think a studio like A24 would ever make.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's something that would get made. You could see Disney or somebody like a major studio making something like this.
Yeah.
And it looking like something like Prince of Persia.
Right.
And they don't do that. They keep this thing. It's epic. It does have size to it.
Oh yeah.
But it is not just bombastic.
Yeah. It's Arthurian.
Yeah, it's not. Well, it's indie.
Yeah.
It's very indie. Like, it's not just bombastic. It doesn't have lots of over the top set pieces. It has set pieces, like the chapters each are their own set piece, but they're very quaint, and they're very what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of minimalistic.
Yeah.
And whereas something like and even like a lot of the shots, it's shot like an A24 film. There are shots in this and like compositions that wouldn't appear, that you wouldn't see in, like, if Disney did something like this.
Yeah. They're very, I would say, intriguing shots.
Yeah. You'll have just, like, the aerial, like, after he kills the Green Knight, just the aerial shot of, like, this symmetrical, like, Wes Anderson shot of the floor, you know, from above.
Yeah, and then when he's following the giants, when it just starts, like, tilting,
yeah,
it, like, gives you that very, like, this is not of this world, very otherworldly feeling.
And especially, another one thing about it, the music. Where, you know, like, a lot of, like, you notice, like, this with, like, indie films, and especially A24 films, they all use, like, this string instrument. I don't know if that's a violin or a cello. I'm not musical enough to know exactly what
it's some kind of string.
It's some kind of string that goes the, you know, like, they score most of these movies with it. Yeah. Maybe. They score a lot of these movies with that instrument. That was really good. But yeah, basically you have these different interesting little episodes. You have the scene with the bandits. That, you know, right off the bat, I knew something was up with this little guy. Barry.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Dev Patel, I think, did we mention Dev Patel yet?
I don't think we have yet.
Okay, but yeah, Dev Patel plays Sir Gawain, who's out to, like, make a name for himself. And then he comes across, like, the first thing is the bandits, the leader of which is played by Barry Keoghan. And I knew right from the bat that he was going to be, like, not this guy that he first thinks he is, like, giving him directions. You kind of get that from watching the trailer, anyways, because he was in, like, one split second of the trailer, where this scene where he's, like, tied up.
Oh, yeah.
But there's plenty of other people in this that, you know, I didn't exactly trust either. Not just the bandit.
The lady in the castle, whose name escapes me.
Which lady? Which lady in the castle?
The one that pretty much sexually assaulted him.
I'll save that for later. I'll save that. That one's in the further in the movie. We'll get to that one. I think you're talking about the ghost lady.
Yeah, well, you know, she was, like, I feel like she was definitely one of those like tests.
Yeah. It's it's again
chivalry.
It's again in the spirit of myths where there's always like tests, just like oh gosh dang it, I haven't taken mythology in years. Who was it that had to go into hell and rescue his Orpheus, yeah. Persephone, was it Persephone?
Eurydice was the one he was
rescuing.
Okay. And then he had to convince Hades to and Persephone.
And he said that she'll follow you up, and and you have to, and you can't turn around until you leave. But he ended up turning around.
Last minute.
Yeah.
Once he was outside and she was still in the cave.
It's in the spirit of that where he comes across this empty mansion where a ghost lady lives, and she tells him her head is at the bottom of this spring where a man who wanted to have his way with her. She refused a man who wanted to have his way with her, and he chopped off her head and threw it in the pond. And he has to go and get that. And when he does that, he gets rewarded back with his axe that was stolen by the bandits. Then you have, after that, the giants. I don't really understand the point of the giants, though.
That one just... It felt like a big-lipped alligator moment to me.
That's what I was... Like, it was cool to see.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I don't understand the point of the giants in this movie.
Like, all it really got us was... It got us from point A to point B, pretty much. And, like, I guess the fox can communicate with them properly, and...
The fox, yeah.
That felt out of place.
The giants, they felt out of place. Even the fox, I don't completely understand why it's in this.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it kind of just falls into that fantasy trope of, like, intelligent, helpful wildlife.
Yeah.
That is present in, like, a lot of other fantasy
films. There's a couple things I do have, like, I'm like, I don't know why that was completely left in the movie. And another thing I don't completely understand was left in the movie. And it's not this, but it's what at the end. You were talking about when he meets the nobleman and his wife, and what was the deal with the old lady who was blindfolded?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my first thought was, like, when they first had, like, a group conversation with him, and they were telling him what's going to unfold after these next few days leading up to where you need to meet the Green Knight. I assume maybe she was a seer of some sort. Because you remember when, at the beginning of the film, when,
his mother,
Morgan Le Fay, who I think is Morgan Le Fay, I think.
The actress?
No, the actual character.
Oh, the character.
Morgan Le Fay.
I'm not sure.
There was, like, some commercial that was explaining the general lore of it, and I think she was supposed to be Morgan Le Fay. I don't know. I don't really know the actual story, and I'm not going to pretend that I do. But she was blindfolded when, like, the whole party was going on, and she wrote out the letter.
I'm assuming she summoned the Green Knight.
Yeah, like...
Okay.
Maybe, like, so she was, like, kind of the one that set up this whole thing
so that her son
could attain greatness.
That's what I'm kind of piecing together as we're talking about this movie. Because there's a couple things I'm still trying to figure out. But, yeah, so he gets to this mansion where the nobleman and his wife are, and they have this old lady who is blindfolded all the time and is just kind of standing around very creepily, listening to conversations. But I'm assuming, like, she's some kind of seer, but basically, and he gets rest and food there, and the nobleman's wife is giving him the fuck me eyes, the come and get it boy eyes, from the minute he walks in. That I'm just like, I am away. I know there's going to be. This is I not only, and I will say this though, that sex scene was not anywhere as disturbing as I thought it was going to be. Because this is an A24 film, and I was expecting way worse out of this.
I mean, it was still disturbing. I mean, it wasn't on the level of, like, it wasn't on, like, the Midsummer level of just...
Good gracious.
Jesus. Anyway. But yeah, it wasn't on the same level as the Midsummer sex scene, but it was disturbing in the same way in that both male characters were essentially sexually assaulted.
Yeah. Yeah, basically.
Or at least, like... coerced.
Well, it was more
will.
coerced because basically she uses that belt, and that belt is basically representative of this honor that he's constantly seeking. But the problem, and basically,
it's a crutch.
It's a crutch, yeah. Not only that, but it's soiled, and that comes into play too because basically, she's wearing this belt and she's like, "Come and get it," and yeah, that is literally it.
Very literally.
And basically, yeah, it's soiled with his semen, literally, and then from then on, it constantly, basically weighs him down on this reminders that I'm not deserving of this, all the way down until when he finally gets to the Green Knight, and this was one of the things I don't completely understand why this is. I don't understand the bisexuality reference in this film.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to, I guess, wrap my head around on whether it was supposed to be that or not. I mean, there's a lot of tenderness between all the male characters in this film that I guess it kind of made me think, is it or isn't it? Because, medieval times were, I guess, a little more, less prudish.
Yeah. Well, the only reason I'm saying this is because, okay, he leaves the house after this problem with the nobleman's wife, and then he turns around and realizes the old woman's been in the room this whole time.
Yeah, which is also just. Again, that's
I know she can't. She probably can't.
Summer vibes all over again.
She probably can't. At least she probably can't see it. But
right. Who knows if she's a seer?
Yeah.
Maybe she mentally saw it.
So he leaves. He flees this house, and then her husband follows him, and there's this weird thing where this weird exchange between him where he kisses him, and just considering that this is one, he just had this thing with his wife, dude's wife. And not only that earlier, but remember, even when he got there, and he woke up in the bed, it implies he's naked in the bed because all his clothes are there, and the man's feeding him. Yeah. So from the beginning, it kind of hints that there is a little bit more with this, like you said, tenderness, but there's a little bit more with this specific guy.
Yeah, I feel like, since the whole thing is each thing is a test, since that's kind of the thing. I was thinking that this castle, these nobles were a test of temptation because and again, I'm not claiming to know this for sure, but I think one of the deals with knighthood, the standards you have to set yourself to, you can't give in to temptations of the sexual variety.
Yeah. And
you have to maintain a status of virtue.
It's a real puzzle of a film, and I like that. That is a credit to this. I salute this film for being ambiguous, something that Hollywood films don't have the courage to do anymore.
Something that Old definitely did do.
Yeah. Well, I remember listening to Terry Gilliam one time. He was talking about why he doesn't like Schindler's List. But he likes a movie like 2001: A Space Odyssey, and he says because Schindler's List completely ignores the fact. I love Schindler's List. I think it's a great movie, but I still
need to see it. That's at the top of my must-see list.
I understand what Terry Gilliam says in this. He says the problem with Schindler's List is it ignores the fact that all these other people died in the Holocaust because it ends with all these Jews walking out free and alive, but completely ignores the millions that were murdered in the camps. And I guess that's kind of a glass half empty, glass half full kind of look. Well, yes, it doesn't acknowledge all show all the ones who died, but it shows you the ones who survived because of this one act. And,
I mean, that's what Boy in the Striped Pajamas is for.
Yeah. And so basically he says, he's like, Spielberg just ignores that while you look at something, while you look at something like 2001: A Space Odyssey, which has an ending that everybody has their own interpretation of, and that was by Stanley Kubrick, and he says, and it's the uncertainty. I can't remember this is where I kind of forget what exactly he said, but he said something about the uncertainty of it is what makes that a great film, and he says the Spielbergs of the world give you certainty, but the Kubricks are going to give you the uncertain. I think that's like, I can't, it's somewhere on the internet. I'm kind of, I don't think I'm quoting him exactly.
No, but that does make sense.
That's kind of what he's saying there. And ambiguity is really what's really cool about this movie. The ambiguity, and kind of letting you kind of try to figure out and piece together and make this image that you want and of what you feel like this movie's trying to make. And it comes back around to it's this story of honor that he hopes to gain. And that brings us to the final, what I feel is the final act of this film, where he finally gets to the Green Knight and he's sitting there waiting for at least a day for the Green Knight to finally awaken on Christmas, exactly 1 year after their first encounter. And you at first think he has fled the Green Knight and gone back home.
Yeah.
And what goes on from there is a good maybe 3 to 5 minute sequence done almost entirely without dialogue, only with images, and shows you what's going on. And it does a pretty damn good job at showing you exactly how he's feeling, what is happening. It's great visual storytelling. The whole that one sequence towards the end of this movie, it's great because he goes back and he's of course welcomed back because they all think he's completed this quest. No, completing his quest would have been him dying. But he comes, so they honor him as the king. He inherits the kingdom. And it still shows how things aren't that good because you have the Crusades going on, which it constantly references throughout the movie, the Crusades. They're kind of in the background of this film a lot, but they're never really addressed until this final scene. And there's all this violence. He loses his son to the Crusades. And then also he loses that girl who he loves at the beginning because it shows he gets back and you get the second uncomfortable sex scene in this film.
Yeah.
And it also ties the sash into that scene.
Nice pun.
Yeah. It ties the sash into it. And when she ultimately has their kid, he just pays her off like she's a common prostitute because I guess that's what she was.
Yeah,
wasn't that what she was?
Yeah, because at the beginning he was spending.
He wakes up in a brothel.
In a brothel.
Yeah, and she's there, and so I'm assuming she was a and just pays her off like that. Takes his son and goes. And did he marry the nobleman's wife? Was that her or was that a different girl?
I thought it was the Saint Winifred girl, the ghost. Because it looked like the same actress, almost like they both had the red hair and the pale skin.
I'm gonna have to look this one up. Of
course, it could have been a completely different person.
Yeah, he marries somebody else who becomes his queen as he takes this role of
noble
king.
Princess, someone.
Yeah, and so he gets these perks of becoming the new king. Something that he doesn't deserve because he didn't complete this quest and he did not gain this honor that he set out for. But then you find out that after there's finally this thing at the where you assume that people are either revolting or something's going on outside the castle. They break down the door and you don't see who or what it is. Suddenly his head is just slit off his head. And then at that moment you think that, okay, it's come full circle. The devil's come to collect. Which is real strikingly similar to the movie I watched last night. I watched Angel Heart on Amazon Prime last night.
What's that about?
I'll tell you later. We'll be here another 20 minutes. But Angel Heart, but it ends. I hope I'm not spoiling. But it ends with you ultimately finding out the devil is collecting his due.
Gotcha.
The same way.
And, that leaves it ambiguous enough for me to not know what happened.
Yeah, but yeah, you still don't understand. It still don't tell you what it's really about. But that's ultimately what it comes down to. But then it cuts away, and you realize he's still there, kneeling before the Green Knight, expecting his head chopped off. It's just that now he has finally seen. I guess he's kind of seeing that that's what I have in store if I don't accept this. I would rather die with my honor here than to die without it after being, after becoming king.
and of course that's symbolized with him taking off
the sash. Yeah, the sash keeps coming to this. Yeah, and again, you kind of assume, like, it doesn't show it, but you have to come to the conclusion that, yeah, he does lose his head at the end of this. It just ends with the Green Knight saying, "Off with your head," and then that's the end of the film. Like, it don't show you anything. That's all she wrote.
Yep.
It doesn't show you nothing else. But you kind of piece that together. Like, yeah, this was an interesting movie. I liked this movie.
Yeah, I liked it. I wouldn't say I loved it, but I liked it.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if it'll be I don't know if it'll be one of my top picks of the year. It's not quite to some of the ones that I'm certain will be on my top 10 list, but it's pretty good. Like, if I don't see a whole lot of else great movies, it might make it. I give it a 3.5 out of 4. I can confidently you give it a 3.5 out of 4.
Yeah, I'd say I give it a
all right.
3.5.
Yeah,
because there was a lot to love about this film, but I wouldn't say it's enough for me to love the film.
Yeah, it's not quite to like something like a Ghost Story.
Yeah.
Did you ever see A Ghost Story?
I have not. That's another one to add to the list.
I loved A Ghost Story.
I've heard good things about it.
Yeah, it was really cool. There was lots of stuff, and it was the same way where stuff you kind of have to piece together, and you have to come to your own conclusions of how these characters feel, and what's making them act this way, and what's and kind of like what you have to realize, like when it starts to play, like it plays with time in that movie.
Shyamalan, take notes.
I loved A Ghost Story. Yeah, it was kind of like if like Terrence Malick did like a Paranormal Activity movie. It's like Tree of Life following the life of a ghost. Yeah,
oh, wow.
It's really cool.
Okay, that does sound interesting.
I liked it a lot. It's by the same director. So yeah, 3.5 out of 4 for this one. Is there anything else about in the movie that we want to talk about?
I guess just the whole, like, all the different meanings of it, because there's, like, a lot of meaning.
I have a feeling this is going to be one of these heavily debated. This is going to be like what Mother was, the Darren Aronofsky one, Jennifer Lawrence one, where everybody's kind of like, what is it? Is it biblical allegory?
Yeah.
Is it condemnation of the way we mistreat the environment? Is it a little bit of both?
Yeah, I feel like definitely in terms of like classic, what's it called? Classic story conflicts. It entails man versus nature, man versus himself. What were the other? There was like 2 more. Man
versus environment. Yeah, well, that's nature.
Man versus nature. There's like man versus man.
Man versus self, man versus environment, and man versus... there's establishment or like collective or something?
I mean, I think that's like the one that I forget. It's like that, or it's like the spirit realm. I don't know. I know like the other 3 are like for sure nature, self, man.
Yeah.
I always forget the 4th one.
Yeah.
So, but it definitely has like those 3 like classic plot conflicts. Because obviously the Green Knight is nature, and there's this whole dialogue going through it about nature reclaiming, like no matter how much you try to control, cultivate, tame, build over it, it will always like reclaim everything. And that's seen throughout the movie visually as well, like when he's tied up from the bandits and there's this whole like 360
that's another shot that like that feels like an A24 shot where it's going clockwise and
everything's getting greener and lusher.
And when it comes back around to his body, it's now a skeleton. But then it goes back around the other direction, comes back around, and that's when he's still alive and he realizes, I got to get out of this. I have to complete my quest.
Yeah, and then there's like the other scene too where like he eats the mushrooms and he vomits and then he like wipes his spit and his like hand
he starts hallucinating.
Like
he's probably because of them shrooms.
He ate some magic mushrooms.
Yeah, he ate some shrooms.
Look, anytime you're out in the forest, just don't eat mushrooms. Period.
Yeah.
It's never a good thing. But yeah, like he sees like his hand getting overgrown with like moss and
whatever that
fungus.
Was, He's hallucinating, yeah.
And then when he's going through the village, like just before he sees the giants, it's obviously this has been a previous civilization that has been completely reclaimed by nature.
Yeah.
So there's that's definitely a very heavy theme.
Yeah.
Throughout the entire thing.
I wonder if there's any. Do you think there's maybe any kind of cautionary tale to this? Like maybe from the religious perspective of like the Crusades, because like I said, the Crusades don't play a huge role in this.
Yeah, I don't know so much cautionary as it is just kind of a tale of what it really means to be honorable.